Hey, zombie fans. Welcome to the 44th episode of Reanimated, the podcast about all things zombie and or undead. My name is Stuart Tiffin. I am one of your hosts. Joining me, as always, is the invulnerable H.A. Conrad on the East Coast. How's it going tonight, H.A.?
Going well, Stuart. Good summer night. It's awesome.
Oh, wonderful. We should thank our sponsor, Squarespace, before we get started. Squarespace being the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own website. Squarespace has been kind enough to give us a code to offer to our gentle listeners who might be thinking about starting up a website. That code is ZOMBIE, not case sensitive, and if you use that, you'll get a 10% off for your first Squarespace purchase. So cash it in, folks. In this episode, we're featuring the Gypsy Song by the band The Freak Fandango Orchestra, used with a Creative Commons license. Today, we're closing out the second season of In the Flesh, which was, dare I say, a bit of a tearjerker. And we got a full plate in front of us, and we're gonna dive right in. Starting off in the fair, is it a borough, Staten Island?
Yeah, it is a borough.
Check me out with my borough knowledge.
Yeah, so a Staten Island man was arrested because he had a small arsenal of weapons in his home, and when he was arrested for said arsenal, was telling them that he was concerned about a zombie apocalypse, which is why he was keeping this arsenal. It honestly isn't that impressive of an arsenal.
43 rounds of ammo is not going to get you very far in the zombie.
No, it's not. I have a feeling. I almost feel like, even though they're saying that he was serious, maybe he was just being totally sarcastic to them. But the fact that that is even a sarcastic comment is kind of funny. Anyway,
I think what we've got going on here, HA, is someone trying to game the system by saying that they're preparing for the zombie apocalypse when this guy's a known member of the Latin Kings. He's basically just ganged up or whatever. Like, you know, these are not zombie protection weapons, which I would probably be more prone to cast a blind eye towards.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's trying to get away with blaming the zombie apocalypse. You're right. And just using them for his own devices. So
diabolical.
It is. But, you know, it also is Staten Island, so I'm not really all that surprised. So, I mean, there's weird stuff that goes out there. No offense to any Staten Islanders that might be listening to this. In other news, did you see this wonderful thing about the zombie world tubing record in Asheville?
I wish there were more pictures with this article.
I do too. I would like to see the zombies actually floating down the river, and it's basically a group event organizer, and it was a bit of a a conservation effort to try to bring people's attention to protect the French Broad River. So it's called Tubeocalypse, the Zombie Float and World Record Attempt, and it's going to take place on September 20th. And the idea is to get as many people as possible to tube down the river in zombie attire. And at this point, over 2,000 people have signed up for the event.
Now, I'm curious, what is it, a zombie costume floating event or world record rather, or is it simply this many tubes is a record?
No, it's the zombie on tubes, I believe.
Okay, so then the previous record set in 2013 in Portland was 600 zombie tubers?
I believe so.
That's impressive.
It's not clear. I mean, maybe it was just the tubing and they've added the zombie thing to make it. Yes, the zombie part they just threw in there for fun. There you go. So it's just the tubing, but still, I kind of like that where they're going with this. So have fun, zombie tubers. I can't wait to see if you make the record.
Like, are people going to be in bathing suits and they're going to get like a makeup artist who's going to use like water insoluble zombie makeup on like people in that'll be difficult, I think.
I think so too, but I'm curious to see how it goes. In more serious news, this is just a weird article that I found in Business Week, and it's actually about a woman who survived Ebola, which is there's an outbreak currently happening. And even though she survived, and at this point, she's not able to there is no risk at this point of people contracting the disease from her. But she, and this is in Guinea, she's been fired from her job. She's just really treated by other people as if she's come back from the dead, and she says that she's being treated like a zombie. And the weird thing about this is just in talking about the BBC show that we're reviewing this week, it's kind of with the PDS sufferers. It's just interesting because this is actually a real world scenario. And granted, I'm not going to deny Ebola is terrifying, but it's got to be really horrible to survive this and to be treated terribly afterwards. You got through all that, and then you're treated like you're not even alive anymore by people, and it's just kind of terrible. But I just thought it was interesting the take of this article, just in terms of her trying to get reintegrated. I did see this next article that you found about the very cool looking zombie car.
The thing I still don't really understand about this is it a real car or is it just Photoshop?
It looks like a rendering to me.
Based on a real Maybach Accelero.
It is a super cool rendering.
And it's done from several angles. Like if you look at the other photos, 3 different angles. Apparently this is an $8 million car. So the fact that somebody would buy an $8 million car and then do all this stuff to it is kind of ridiculous. But it's basically the badassest zombie survival vehicle ever. It's got, it's hard to even say, but like a modified front grille that's very hardcore. It's got the rear wheels have been replaced by tracks or treads. And some kind of ordnance on either on the back rear. It looks like maybe a grenade launcher or rocket launcher. It's hard to say. And something else in the front that comes out of kind of the engine. It's just ridiculous. This thing is pretty badass. It looks like it should be out of a Batman movie.
I'm liking this car.
Yeah.
I could never afford this car, but still, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then there's an interesting link at the end of this article to the 10 best horror movie cars. Did you take a look at that?
I didn't, but perhaps.
There was nothing zombie related, so it's not really even. I mean, a lot of it's like Stephen King, wrote. What was the one he wrote about the car that killed Christine, right? And then there's been apparently a lot of cars like independently killing people movies out there. The coolest one that I saw that was kind of interesting was the big old truck from Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, that was creepy.
Yeah, that's a creepy old truck. 1941 Chevrolet Co. Otherwise, the rest of them are all kind of... the one from Evil Dead, of course, makes an appearance too. That 1973 Lincoln, or no, Oldsmobile. Anyway, but yeah, so cool cars in movies. Something that we, for whatever reason, we come back to the subject of cars fairly frequently. They're a part of our society, I guess.
You can't forget Duel. Come on.
I can't, because I've never seen it. So,
You've never seen Duel?
I did read about it in the... That's the one with the truck killing people?
Yes, and it's a Spielberg film. It was his first film.
Oh, my.
So, George Romero, did you happen to listen to his NPR?
Negative. I did read some of the highlights.
Well, so I'm imagining that part of this is because his comic book is coming out. Or his graphic novel, rather. And it's an interesting listen. Definitely take the time. I think he says a few things that I've heard him say before. But one of the things that he says is just that the idea that the zombies, as he envisioned them, sort of becoming the modern zombie, and that's one of these monsters that walk alongside classic movie monsters, is something that he didn't expect, and he's actually quite humble about it. But then other parts of the highlights that I think I found the most interesting were how, when they were making Night of the Living Dead, how he and the other folks involved didn't think that there would be an issue with their main character being African American, and Dwayne Jones, who played Ben in the film, was actually very nervous and very, very nervous about some of the things that happened in the film, because he was basically living a very different existence than Romero or any of the other people involved in the film were. So especially the scene where he hits Barbara. He's like, do you know what's going to happen to me? When people see this, like, I don't know what's going to happen to me out in public, which is just an interesting remark, I think.
I don't think it's that far-fetched for him to be concerned about that, though. And I wonder what kind of blowback there was for him after the movie aired.
It actually makes me more interested to find out if there are any interviews with him, to see his experience doing this. But it answers a little bit more of the question that we had even when we were talking about Night of the Living Dead, how he was saying that this wasn't a film about race, or this wasn't supposed to be about current events, but it kind of was. And you can't deny some of that. Maybe it was happenstance that this guy was the best actor amongst your friends, but then once other things were happening during the course of making the film, it's interesting that they still didn't see it that way, but he did. So I'd be really curious to see if there's any more interesting things out there. So maybe we should track that down. But the other piece that I thought was very interesting is that, he basically, Romero he said part of why he's doing the comic, or the graphic novel, is because you can't really do a small zombie film anymore, because Zombieland came out, and then, there's no ability to do that. So he just wants to do something that he has control over. So that's more the thing. Like, he can't do something and have complete control over all the creative pieces of it, without having the big studios involved. Do you think that's true?
I mean, it seemed like each of his movies that he did got more and more expensive. So in that regard, yes. But was he behind that or not? I guess, he was trying to do more and more kind of ambitious projects.
Well, he was, but I mean, I kind of feel like now, with the difference in how you are able to make films, and you can now make them more cheaply, I feel like that would be right up his alley. Like, get a team together. I'm sure you could get funding. He could probably do a Kickstarter to make his own zombie film,
Jesus,
like,
yeah, he would kill.
No, you know what I'm saying? Like I think that's like a silly statement. Maybe he just doesn't have it in him to do a zombie film at this point, and that's, he kind of wants to write the graphic novel. But I think I would rather, and it's called Empire of the Dead, by the way. But I would be interested to see what he would come up with to do a Kickstarter. I think he would make the most amazing thing ever.
I think that would be a ton of work, and he's probably just, like, how many people does he have to corral for the book? It's, two or three guys, and for a movie, there would be dozens and dozens of people, and maybe he's just worn out. Maybe,
but anyway, I just thrown it out there. So I'm sure George Romero, if you're listening, I think you should go for it, because he is, Stuart, of course. Now I have I'm not going to get too far into it, but last week we were talking about how excited we were to see the premiere of The Strain, which is based on the book by Guillermo del Toro. And I think that we need to reserve our judgment until we have a couple more episodes air, because I don't want to review it right now.
Okay. Without reading between the lines, I agree, and yes.
Okay.
Let us speak no more of it until we're ready.
I just want to be fair, so I also want to reread the book.
Yeah, because we were really fair to the Zombieland pilot, weren't we?
Yeah, I know, we were so fair. Well, I think in this case it's because I've been talking this up so much, and now I feel somewhat guilty. But we'll maybe I'll change my mind after the second.
In the interest of fairness, let's wait. And, we'll talk. We'll talk about it when the season's over. So there. Do we have any idea how many episodes they're doing? 22, or hopefully not?
I hope not 22. But we'll see. But in things that we can review, I think we can talk about the season finale for series 2 of In the Flesh.
I agree. I think that we can talk about that. Hang on, I'm going to see how many episodes. Oh, there's 13 this year of The Strain. But moving on to the final 6th episode of Series 2, In the Flesh. What will happen? Last time we left off, Simon was going out to murder Kieren. Kieren's parents had decided that he was a bad kid. Jemima was in the embrace of Gary the Dick. Maxine Martin was doing mysterious things in her hotel room and at gravestones. And the village fate, the winter fate, like, why do they have a winter? I don't know. But that was about to happen, and combine all of that with a couple of weird predictions or prophecies about second risings and first risens. There was a lot kind of, climaxing, if you so to speak, in this episode.
Indeed.
Did you feel suitably climaxed?
I did, but I was immediately worried that this wasn't going to get renewed for season 3.
What was giving you that immediate concern?
Well, we can talk about it as we get into it and we talk about the ending, but
okay, but overall, can you give like a generic overall? How'd you feel about this episode and how it ties up the season?
Oh, it tied up the season pretty well. I feel like, there are moments here, and I think Dominic Mitchell did a really good job of tying certain themes together. Some of it felt like, it felt a little too speedy for certain things to be happening, but it was still well done, and so I gave it a pass. But one of my biggest issues that I had with this is that, again, I feel like the reactions of Kieran's family, and I guess you could see this British family having been through what they're through and being people that are law-abiding citizens and feel like they're part of this community. I guess I can see them taking the side of the council to some extent, but they were so supportive of Kieren up until this point. It still felt false to me. So that was my biggest issue. And then,
it felt very, very artificial that we had to go back there to then have them come to their senses again, like a second time.
It just doesn't feel like they would do that. It feels like they'd have his back and like they would not, I just don't feel like they would let him down like they did in this particular season.
Yeah.
So
that was the biggest weak spot for me too. That and Maxine Martin's kind of entire story arc.
Yeah, her storyline, and it never redeemed itself. And
Nope.
I was really hoping it would. I was hoping that there'd be something.
She's a capable actress, like you could tell that you could give her some crazy lines and she would be able to give him credibility, but just whatever it was about her story, they just never fleshed it out enough.
Right. But there were other really amazing things in this episode, which I did really like. So, I think in this episode, we really see Kieren sticking to his guns. Like he is somebody that has at this point been challenged. He's been falsely accused of letting the rabid zombies out and attack the nurse. He's had to deal with Jem's boyfriend, Gary, his comments to him, and basically his racism, his zombie racism. And he basically isn't going to back down at this point. He is put into a position where everybody is trying to force him to sign a confession.
Even his dad.
Even his father. And the way that this is done, it's kind of like, just sign this and everything will be okay. And you really feel bad for him. I mean, these are people that he loves. He doesn't want to let them down. He doesn't want to go back to the treatment center. And you get the sense that if you're taken back and you're not compliant, this is a very, very bad thing.
I would be going total apeshit if I was him at this point. And in this episode where he's like he's been locked in his room and he doesn't even know it.
Right, he's been locked in. They're now saying they're scared of him. See, this is what doesn't fully ring true for me.
Because the only thing he has done is he went out when he was supposedly under house arrest. He went out to look for Simon. That's the only thing he's really done that was that I can recall that is like against the rules. And honestly, he was under house arrest for a bad reason in the first place. So why all of a sudden, just because of the public opinion, now his family completely distrusts him? Doesn't make much sense, as we've said.
It doesn't, and also just to have his dad act this way and his mother to completely let him down too. She just kind of chose the line and is like, okay, well, if this is what you think, then okay. It's weird because she's been one of Kieran's firmest supporters, and you don't see that here. And then Jem is being Jem, and that's another thing. So the Walkers, which were such a strong part of the first series, I feel like they did not do justice to these characters. The writers, I don't think, did justice to them in this series.
And they certainly didn't. If they like removed this enjoyable part of the show, they haven't replaced it with something else equally enjoyable.
Right. Other than, I mean, I think
potentially.
Simon potentially. I do think that Amy's character is still incredible. But there's nothing that the interactions with his family was part of the most like heartwarming parts of the other series. And I mean,
think about the last couple episodes of first season where they're doing group hugs and having these like amazing monologues, and
right.
And all of that was kind of undone this season.
Right. So there's that, but still, I mean, Kieren is basically not going to back down, even though it hurts him, and it hurts him to go against what his family is thinking and to make them think badly of him. But he just can't do it, and I was actually very proud of Kieren in this sense, in these scenes. But on the opposite end, you've got Amy, who is having a kind of a weird day. She is with Philip, and like really with Philip, and I like the scenes with them in this, and they're basically walking around going on a proper date. They are very much acting like boyfriend and girlfriend, but it's so fast. So it's sort of this, okay, we're gonna have this real thing, and suddenly Philip is all, protective of Amy. And talks to everybody, and he's gained a spine, I guess.
Overnight.
But I mean, maybe he does love. Again, love does funny things to people. So maybe that's what we're seeing here, and that's this thing. But she also is. She is starting to feel things. Like, so she's felt things on her face. She can hold his hand now. And she is apparently eating. But it's
that when she starts eating the candy apple in the fair, and then gets not accosted, but at least like questioned about that by Philip's mom. It seemed a little dumb because she had also just been telling Philip earlier in the episode, like, hey, we can't tell anybody about this. They're just going to take me away and do tests on me. If they figure out that I'm changing, I'm not, And then she goes to the fair in a very public place with Philip and just starts eating.
Well, I don't think she was doing it consciously. I think she was just having fun and kind of like forgot that she was hiding.
Yes. I mean, if you hadn't eaten anything in like 9 months to a year, would you be able to
think about how she forgot that she doesn't normally eat breakfast. So I think it was just an instinct. But we also see just a little bit more to this mystery. There's these two very odd, I call them like the Scully and Mulder characters, because that's what they kind of feel like. They're obviously from some government agency or something like that, and they come into town and start questioning Amy's doctor, or the doctor at the center in town. And it's clear with their conversations and filling in that they know what they're dealing with here, and the doctor has sent Amy's blood samples to them, so they must know something's going on with her. And it sounds like they've come to collect her, and they make comments that it's not easy forcibly removing somebody. It's interesting because the doctor, he's trying to protect her. He doesn't want to give them her address and that kind of thing. Yeah. So at some point that she will clash with them in the episode, but they're kind of running parallel storylines there.
It's a weird element to the story that the Rorton, the like local National Health Service representatives, except for the nurse who was kind of a dick, being Philip's mom and this doctor guy, are really pro zombie.
Well, they're pro PDS, but I mean, this is the thing about Rorton, which again, it's one of those weird things where you have this community that's dealing with the integration of the PTS sufferers. With the healthcare workers, Philip's mom and the doctor, it's weird because it's like they don't look at them as undead or what they're looking at them as people and
as patients.
And they've known these people. They've known these people since they've been children. So it's like they're part of the community and they have a very different way of looking at them than the rest of the community does, which is really interesting. Even which part?
That reminds me of the penultimate episode where Kieran's up in front of the parish council, and that woman asks him, "Are you the community?" Which is a ridiculous question, and he kind of is like, "What? What are you saying?" Mm-hmm. And he has to be like, "No, because that doesn't even make sense." And she's like, "No, you're not. We are." Okay, lady, you're a fucking crazy person.
Yeah, and it's like, so it's like stuff like that that's interesting. And then there is some very sweet scenes because Amy and Philip are going around and, you can tell Amy's a little bit worried that Philip's mom is going to be judging. And in fact, she's very supportive and basically tells Philip he's chosen well, which is cute.
It's like the best life choice he's made as far as she's concerned, which is really nice.
Yeah. And so there's all that going on. So they're all lovey-dovey. And then in the meantime, poor Kieren is getting accosted by Gary, Jem's boyfriend, who is he's on the hunt for Simon. He doesn't believe that Kieren doesn't know where he is. And in the process of giving Kieren the third degree, discovers some blue oblivion, which, Kieran's not going to use it. He found it. And
why did he pick it up and take it with him, though?
Again, that's one of these plot points where I don't really understand it either.
Like, what did you think that was going to come in handy later? I don't think that doesn't make sense for him.
I think he was going to ask Simon about it. Yeah. And confront Simon about it, but maybe not. And Simon's kind of witnessed the fact that Gary broke into the house. Gary wants Kieren to tell him where Simon is and is threatening him. And basically, once he finds the blue oblivion, drags him out of the house. And then you can see a thought forming in his mind. He's going to make Kieren go rabid so Jem can kill him, which is really messed up.
Yeah, I saw him come to the conclusion that he wanted to force feed him the drugs and make him go rabid. I did not think he would be as much of a coward as to force Jem, who's already really messed up in the head, to kill her own brother. I don't see how he would ever think that was going to work in his favor. Well,
he's crazy, and he thinks he's going to make his problems go away by having her kill.
I thought maybe it was some kind of delusional attempt to make her like get over her conscience.
Maybe.
But whatever. It was obviously a terrible idea. But and the way he makes him take it is gross too. Like rubs it in the hole in the back of his head.
It's disgusting.
Really nasty.
And in the meantime, there's the village fete going on. They're walking this perimeter, which, I think is the timing of the rising. And as we know, the anniversary is that day, which is why Simon's also tracking Kieren down, most likely to kill him, we think. And it's this really stressful moment because Kieren even tries to tie himself to one of the grates and just can't.
With some string?
With some string or wire or something. And then, ends up walking right into the group of villagers and sees his father. And, it's this really weird moment where suddenly his father is just like, it's almost like his dad is like, okay, now you're rabid. Eat me. I'll support you.
I did not understand this at all.
It was very weird. And then,
like his mother has already come to this conclusion that they should not be sending him to Norfolk because Philip's mom is like, yeah, it's disgusting what this village council has been doing to your son. And it's good that he's got you in his corner, which is, of course, absolutely not the case. And so she gets guilted into having a change of conscience, but never gets to really act on it. His dad, however, sees Kieren out of the house again and now turned rabid. And his first question is, why, son? Of course, he's a rabid zombie. He can't talk. But then suddenly and inexplicably has this reaction of like, oh, I was wrong before. I love you. You're my son. I'm not going to let anybody take you away. Even though, as far as he's concerned, his son is he's already said you're untrustworthy and you're going to be up to shenanigans and you've got to stay locked in the house. Because I would assume because of exactly what he sees in front of him, which is his son turned rabid. And I don't see how he comes to the conclusion that this is the person he wants to protect.
Well, right. And then suddenly, the villagers have guns out, and of course somebody's going to shoot him, and Simon basically takes a bullet for him. And then suddenly his dad is like, "Oh, there you are. You're Kieran's boyfriend, and you guys are okay in my book." And like it just feels totally forced. And Simon is very impressed by the fact that Kieren, because basically Kieren fights off the Blue Oblivion. He does not attack his father. You can see him trying not to do it. Which is, a very, it's a very important piece because, like, at this point, we've never seen a PDS sufferer able to do that. They're pretty much done.
Although what was the couple in the earlier episode where the guy he was kind of able to fight it a little bit, like by kicking the sledgehammer over to his former wife?
Well, he was, but he didn't take the Blue Oblivion, which is supposed to, I think, make you a little bit less yourself.
Even crazier.
Right. But, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. So, and Simon's obviously chosen to save Kieren, not kill him.
We've kind of got a confrontation between Simon's followers and the townspeople too, where it almost seems like there's going to be open combat, but it doesn't, because all the zombies have Blue Oblivion, and all the townspeople have these insane-looking zombie killing weapons, but nothing comes of that. Unfortunately, though, Maxine Martin is being a lunatic nearby, and we finally, and you called this last time, but we finally find out that it's her little brother whose grave she's sitting at, and she wants him to come back from the dead. And at this point, I'm just like, I no longer have any idea what this character is all about. I mean, I guess I do now, because this is the new thing she's all about. But like at the first episode, she's drilling zombies through the head.
Right, and you know what? I don't really care what she's all about.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate problem with her character.
And I still don't care, and I still don't believe that people would have turned on her. So, I mean, she basically goes. She realizes, and obviously she knows it's Amy. That's the first risen, according to the bed and breakfast lady. And she's totally bonkers. But it's like, I don't really believe that she would be as motivated to do this, or if she was, we don't see enough of why.
Like, so her little brother died in 1994. This is taking place, I think, in 2013. Like, this is, so her brother's been dead for 19, 20 years, and she's still this crazy about it? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
It doesn't, I mean, yeah, well, maybe in that she thought her brother would rise again, and he didn't. And that was weird. And so she's trying to, and much like the Audie, she who wanted his wife to rise again, and it basically was in a certain time frame when they died, I guess, that it was only within the previous 19 months, if they had died, that they would come back. And so, I mean, she's looking to have that happen, but it's still not a compelling story line.
You remember when Audie revealed to her that was what he believed, and she gave him a very straight response of, "You're an insane person. I can't believe you're saying this to me." And yet that was apparently what she believed also, or maybe we're supposed to believe that she came to this belief over the time that she spent in Rorton.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's once she saw the Undead Prophet video, suddenly she believed in one fell swoop. That was all it took. But again, it's sort of weird because you've got some really great writing in this. You've got some really great actors. Seriously, I do think that Amy as a character is just such an incredible little piece to this. She's always great. And
just as she's feeling her heartbeat.
Right. And she's had this fantastic day. She's like really, she's starting to live again. And, this is just a terrible, terrible thing for a writer to do. But he did it. And right at her happiest moment, she gets her heart stabbed by Maxine.
With some scissors.
with scissors. And this is the other thing. I'm sorry, this just bothered me terribly about this, and it was heartbreaking. But I don't think Philip would have let this happen. I don't know. It felt like it was the slowest stab in the heart I've ever seen.
Yeah, I guess.
You didn't
Yeah.
think that?
I don't. I remember. Well, I'm not looking at it right in front of me, but it seems to me in my mind's eye that Maxine Martin is standing pretty far away from Amy when she first comes up to them. Yeah, and then she's suddenly stabbing her in the chest a couple times.
Well, and not to mention the fact it's not like Amy is exactly a shrinking violet. I feel like Amy wouldn't have allowed this to happen either. So it's just sort of a weird thing. It happened, and then there's this really it suddenly with Amy's death, Maxine is exposed. She goes and has some kind of crazy meltdown in front of all the village at the village fete, and
And all of a sudden, the whole community
turns.
realizes that they've been wrong. Like even Dean tases Maxine and says she's a nutter or whatever, and then everybody else is like, well, it's actually that's not true because they're still muttering at the league later. Some of the old curmudgeons, but yeah, it's definitely it feels like a sea change, and all of a sudden, people are okay again now with the PDS folk, and it's a little too convenient and doesn't reflect the sort of nastiness that we've been seeing.
Well, and I guess this is a reason why I thought maybe it would have been nice if they had known they were going to be renewed, because I think perhaps some of this was to give it closure in case it wasn't. And that is perhaps why we saw such a speedy sort of rounding up of everything and trying to tie up loose ends.
Yeah.
But, Kieren, it's this very touching thing where he actually has Amy's will, which when she was going to commit suicide or have Philip help her die, had written her last will and testament, and it was just this whole thing about people wearing great clothes and her being like just her very unique personality showing through, and like they all have to show up wearing like their best. But did you notice that these British people didn't really their clothes are still a little bit drab?
Okay, that's they're in Rorton. What do you expect?
I don't know, just saying it
It's not
was
like
just
they could
kind
all
of funny.
shop at Forever 21 or something.
I do like that Kieren looks a little bit like Annie Hall in his little hat and like this flower and stuff.
It also doesn't help that it's raining constantly in this episode. It's like every scene, especially the funeral, and then later on when the doctors are doing their thing in the cemetery, it's just pouring with rain.
And poor Philip. I mean, Philip's sitting there by Amy's grave and won't leave. And then when he finally does, the doctors basically are obviously digging her up, and they say it's not too late. So I think if it does get renewed, we will probably see Amy again.
In one way or another.
Yep. And also, of course, Kieren is now showing the same signs that Amy did with the nosebleeds and the shakes.
Because the first risen is still out there.
Yep.
Yeah, and it still could be Amy. Who knows? Like, they've left this thing wide open, with the exception that everything is okay again in the Walker household. Oh, well.
All of a sudden, well, maybe until next season.
Yeah, and next season they'll probably all hate each other again after a minute. Jem finally copped to killing Henry, too, like, which was... Yeah, we're glad that this happened because she's been such a mess ever since this season started, and, like, this is the first sign of her kind of coming to terms and working through her issues. But it's, I don't know, a little weird. And it's very, like it was the bracelet, of course, too, that lets Kieren know that he can ask her about this. And
Well, I mean, I like how Kieren is he's basically now sticking to his guns. He knows who he is, and he's not running away from that anymore. I just don't think that the things would have been as right on his end with his family the way everything has been. I don't think it could have been made right by a few kind words. You know?
He should be pissed.
He should be pissed. And he is just terribly sad, and you feel awful for him. I mean, I think the highlights of this episode for me were the Amy and Philip's big day out. And that was, some of the things surrounding that. But it didn't end quite like I wanted to. It wasn't as strong as a couple of the episodes in the middle.
I'll say if they do another season, I would really like to see Kieren kind of emancipate himself from his parents, because he was supposed to be 18 when he died,
Hmm.
and now, because Jem was younger than him, is now, quote unquote older than him. He's been out of the ground on drugs, on the PDS drugs for a year or so. He should kind of move out and have his own life, and maybe he'll go live with Simon. Who knows? But the problem is, of course, that like him having to live in a household of other people who are not like him is part of the drama. But it'll get a little bit unrealistic that he's like this weird dependent man-child zombie.
Right. And I mean, I get the feeling because it sounds like Simon's staying in town that perhaps that is what's going to happen. But yeah. But I feel like if they do a season 3, and I don't know if they will, because I think this is aired on BBC 3 or something like that, which is in danger of being, I think it's going to be gone.
Oh, yeah.
So I think there's a question there. But if they renew it, I would like to see just a little bit more consistency in the writing and in the character development.
And better villains.
Well, better villains, and also let's not mess with what you built in the first place. And that's why I think the Kieren family problem for me was it did not sit well with me, because they had done so much in the first series. And yeah, I'll give you that. People get scared. They might go back to what their initial instinct was, but it never felt that that's what their instinct was. This felt contrived to push the story along, which wasn't good. So anyway, I still enjoyed the series. I'm glad there were 2. I would definitely watch a 3rd, but I would like to see a little bit more out of it.
Yeah. Potentially they should do another 3-episode miniseries. It really worked out the first time, like a 3-hour story.
Yeah, I almost felt like it was more successful in that format.
This is a problem that happens to a lot of TV, is that they, like, The Walking Dead is an example of this. Although their final episode in season 1 was iffy, it's tighter. Like once you have to double the amount of storytelling, you're going to run into problems of like story bloat or something, along those lines. And I think we had some problems with that here and there. Even though the overall arc was interesting and they had great characters, we just had manufactured drama that doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
Agreed. So yeah, that rounds out series 2.
Season 2 in America of In the Flesh.
But you know what? One thing I will say is that I'd like to see these actors in other things.
Well, I'm telling you, have you had a chance to watch any of The Fall? Probably not. You've had a busy week, but you'll get a chance to watch Simon with a mustache in that Netflix original.
Oh, that's cool.
What are we going to talk about next time?
I don't even know. What are we going to talk about next time?
Well, you know how there's like 6 Resident Evil movies?
No! Really?
I think there's at least 6.
Wait, haven't we done 2?
We've done 1. There's another one coming out this summer sometime, but I think we're going to have to do another one. Resident Evil Apocalypse came out in 2004. So, yeah, join us, fans and friends of the show, next time when we review the amazing sequel film Resident Evil: Apocalypse, starring Mia Jovovich. Pretty exciting.
It is exciting. It is a very summer movie to watch, though, isn't it? It's very blockbustery.
It's British Canadian. What could go wrong? Are we still podcasting, or are we?
Oh, I thought we were done. Sorry.
No, okay. That's fine.
I guess we should say goodbye.
Hey, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.